that begins in a galaxy far beyond Earth, in a place where civilizations had evolved far ahead of anything humans could imagine. These alien societies were not just advanced in technology, they had mastered thinking, observation, and analysis in ways that humans could only dream of. They had ships that could move faster than light, machines that could predict outcomes decades into the future, and intelligent systems that could scan entire planets without ever being seen. Among these advanced beings, there was a shared sense of caution whenever a new species showed signs of rapid growth and potential power. And Earth, tiny and blue, spinning in the quiet corner of its solar system, had caught their attention. Humans had always been a fascinating species to these observers. They were small, fragile, and limited in their lifespan compared to the aliens. Yet they exhibited something unique: unpredictability. Unlike many species that followed rigid patterns and could be forecasted with precision, humans acted in ways that were sometimes completely unexpected. They fought wars, built amazing technologies, created art and culture, and yet often made decisions that seemed illogical or emotional. The aliens studied this carefully, trying to understand the driving force behind human behavior. It wasn't just the humans' inventions that intrigued them, but their determination, creativity, and above all, their stubbornness. Time and again, humans had overcome challenges that should have destroyed them, and this resilience did not go unnoticed. As the aliens observed Earth, they noticed how humans were beginning to expand their influence beyond their own planet. Satellites and probes had been sent to other planets. Communication signals had started to reach out into the void, and the Earth had become a place of both unity and division. The aliens interpreted this as a sign of increasing ambition, a potential threat that could, if left unchecked, spread chaos beyond the small planet. In their discussions, the leaders of the coalition often said, "This species is unpredictable, powerful in ways they do not yet understand, and potentially dangerous to the stability of nearby star systems." The concern grew, and with it, a sense of urgency. They did not want to wait until humanity became too powerful to control or predict. From years of careful observation, the aliens formed a conclusion. Humans, they believed, were hierarchical in their thinking, and their society was controlled by leaders with immense power. While they did notice the diversity of human governance, they assumed that at the very top there must be a central figure, a supreme leader who could direct the entire species. This assumption was flawed, but it seemed logical from their perspective. They believed that if this leader were removed, the human race would collapse, unable to organize or continue its growth. In other words, they thought humanity was like a single tree. Cut the main trunk, and the branches would fall to the aliens. It seemed like a perfect solution. If they could identify this so-called leader of Earth and neutralize him or her, they could prevent humans from becoming a galactic threat without causing widespread destruction to the planet itself. It was a plan based on observation, calculation, and their interpretation of human society, but it was a plan that relied on a misunderstanding. They never realized that human leadership was decentralized, diverse, and complex. No single person truly commanded the fate of all humanity. Yet, confident in their assumptions, the coalition began their preparations in secret. Meanwhile, life on Earth continued as it always had, unaware of the attention from across the stars. Humans were busy with their everyday struggles, their ambitions, and their conflicts. Leaders rose and fell, nations grew and declined, and ordinary people lived their lives dreaming, hoping, and struggling to improve their world. The idea that aliens were watching was, for now, a theory in science fiction, a story told in books and movies, never considered a reality. But far beyond human perception, the coalition's eyes were on every corner of the planet. They tracked political developments, economic changes, and even the cultural shifts that occurred when people responded to crises. Everything was recorded, analyzed, and stored for future planning. The aliens also noted the humans' capacity for cooperation and conflict. They saw how humans formed alliances, both locally and globally, yet also how they frequently engaged in wars and disputes. To the aliens, this combination was both fascinating and dangerous. They believed that by removing the central figure of authority, humans would lose their ability to coordinate, resulting in chaos and a natural slowing of their growth. They failed to see that human society often flourished in the absence of a single leader, drawing strength from collaboration and collective problem-solving. This misinterpretation became the cornerstone of their plan, the assumption on which everything else depended. In preparation for their intervention, the coalition deployed sophisticated intelligence probes across the solar system. These probes were designed to observe without being detected, collecting data on communication patterns, political speeches, and public perception of leaders. Over time, they identified several individuals who seemed influential, but they were particularly focused on one person, the spokesperson of the United Earth Council. To the aliens, this individual appeared to be the pinnacle of human authority, the person upon whose decisions the fate of the species seemed to hinge. Of course, in reality, the spokesperson's influence was significant but not absolute. Humans had many leaders, advisors, and institutions that balanced power, making the assumption of a single point of control a critical error. The coalition's discussions about this leader grew intense. Some members of the alien society began to question whether removing a single human could truly prevent the species from progressing, but the majority insisted that it was worth trying, arguing that it was better to act now than wait until humans became too capable to stop. They believed that this intervention would be swift, decisive, and ultimately prevent future conflict on a galactic scale. It was a plan rooted in fear and misunderstanding, yet from their perspective, it made perfect sense. During this period, humans continued their development, unaware of the looming threat. Scientific discoveries were made, political debates raged, and social movements began to shape the future of Earth. The very traits that made humans unpredictable, their creativity, their adaptability, their emotional depth, were invisible to the aliens' calculations. The coalition only saw patterns, probabilities, and influence, failing to account for the intangible qualities that defined humanity. In this sense, the stage was set for a profound misunderstanding that would have consequences far beyond what anyone could imagine. The tension within the coalition grew as they debated the ethics of intervention. Some questioned whether it was right to interfere with an entire species based on assumptions and fear. Others argued that inaction was more dangerous, that the potential risk of a human-led expansion into the galaxy justified preemptive measures. These debates mirrored the very human dilemmas they were trying to prevent: how to act when uncertain, how to balance risk and morality, and how to make decisions with incomplete information. Ironically, the aliens' deliberations reflected the very traits that made humans both dangerous and remarkable. They are convinced that the removal of Earth's leader is both necessary and effective. They prepare for the operation with precision, calculating every possible variable and outcome. Yet, despite all their intelligence and advanced technology, they remain blind to the most crucial fact: humans are not ruled by a single figure. The seeds of their failure are already planted, but they cannot see it. Meanwhile, on Earth, life continues normally, with humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their world has just become the focus of an alien strategy that misunderstands the very nature of their species. The stage is now set for the events that will follow, an epic confrontation between expectation and reality, between observation and true understanding. With the coalition of aliens moving from careful observation to active planning, they had decided that removing the so-called leader of Earth was essential to controlling the unpredictable human species. Their intelligence reports painted a picture of a species tightly bound by hierarchy, led by a single individual whose influence stretched across the globe. From their distant vantage point, they studied human communication, politics, and society through every available means, scanning satellite transmissions, analyzing broadcasts, and even observing subtle social behaviors. They interpreted patterns that suggested humans followed authority without question. In their minds, the elimination of one key figure would destabilize the species and halt their progress. Asterisk to the aliens. The United Earth Council spokesperson appeared to embody everything humans depended on: coordination and influence over governments and populations. They did not see that Earth's leadership was complex, shared, and often collaborative. For the coalition, this was irrelevant. The data seemed clear, and their confidence was high. They began to believe that a single carefully timed strike could achieve the desired outcome, preventing humans from reaching a stage where they could threaten other civilizations in the galaxy. In their calculations, the operation would be precise, fast, and irreversible. It was a plan born from intelligence and misinterpretation alike. The coalition began preparing the tools for their mission. They designed biomechanical probes, tiny machines capable of moving undetected across vast distances. These probes were sophisticated beyond anything humans had ever seen. They could infiltrate buildings, observe conversations without detection, and even manipulate objects on a microscopic scale. Each probe was programmed with a detailed history and behavior of the target, ensuring that the mission could be carried out without error. For months, the aliens tested and refined their technology, simulating countless scenarios and outcomes. Every possibility was calculated, yet the one variable they consistently overlooked was human resilience, the unpredictable strength of a species that thrived in uncertainty. While the coalition focused on preparation, humans continued their lives, unaware of the invisible attention directed at them. The spokesperson of the United Earth Council worked tirelessly on humanitarian projects, international diplomacy, and climate initiatives. To humans, these were acts of service aimed at making the planet a better place. To the aliens, however, they were signals of centralized power, proof that this individual could sway entire nations with a single decision. Every speech, every policy announcement, and every appearance was logged by the probes, creating a detailed but flawed picture of global influence. The aliens were confident that their target was indeed the controlling mind behind all of humanity. As the operation drew closer, the coalition's internal debates grew more heated. Some scientists and strategists began to question whether their understanding of human society was too simplistic. Could one individual truly represent the decision-making of an entire species? Other members dismissed these concerns, arguing that action was urgent. The potential for human expansion into the galaxy posed a risk too great to ignore. Time was not on their side. They believed that waiting would allow humans to become more coordinated, technologically advanced, and potentially unstoppable. In their minds, preemptive action was the only way to ensure safety. The probes were finally launched. Traveling silently across space to Earth, they navigated through the solar system, invisible to satellites and undetectable to human sensors. Once in orbit, they deployed smaller units capable of entering the atmosphere, scanning cities, and identifying the exact location of the target. The aliens had planned for every contingency: escape routes, security protocols, and potential interference from human forces. From their perspective, it was a flawless operation, a combination of intelligence, technology, and precise timing. The target was unaware, living a life that seemed ordinary, yet in reality, every move was being monitored by beings light years away. The coalition observed the target closely as the final steps of the operation approached. They noted meetings, diplomatic interactions, and speeches, analyzing which actions indicated control over global decisions. Each pattern confirmed their belief that this person was indeed the central authority. They even detected public admiration and international cooperation directed at the spokesperson, which they interpreted as evidence of influence rather than shared leadership. In reality, these actions reflected the complex network of governance, collaboration, and social support that characterized human society, but the aliens did not recognize it. Their understanding was based on observation alone, filtered through assumptions that proved to be dangerously incomplete. Meanwhile, humans continued to interact, debate, and make decisions in ways that seemed chaotic but were effective in maintaining balance. Scientists collaborated across borders, governments negotiated treaties, and ordinary citizens engaged in civic activities. These actions, which were decentralized and diverse, strengthened the species as a whole. The aliens, however, remained fixated on their plan. They were convinced that eliminating the leader would create confusion, weaken coordination, and stop humanity's momentum. The more they watched, the more certain they became, even as the very behaviors they observed indicated resilience rather than dependence on a single figure. The probes moved closer to the target's location, carefully avoiding detection. They documented every detail: the layout of buildings, the timing of security shifts, and the patterns of movement of staff and assistants. Each probe was synchronized with the others, ensuring that the operation could be executed simultaneously from multiple angles. To the aliens, success seemed guaranteed. They had anticipated every possible reaction and prepared contingency measures for each scenario. They did not realize that the complexity of human society meant that even if one plan succeeded, the species as a whole could respond unpredictably, adapting in ways no probe could fully understand. As the day of the operation approached, tension within the coalition was palpable. Leaders held final meetings, reviewing every data point and simulation. They reiterated the mission objectives: neutralize the leader quickly, prevent global awareness of alien interference, and ensure minimal collateral damage. The success of this operation would, in their view, define the future of human expansion and, by extension, the stability of nearby star systems. The stakes were immense, yet they remained confident, relying on technology, observation, and analysis to guide their actions. For them, the mission was not just strategic. It was necessary for the safety of the galaxy back on Earth. The spokesperson continued their work, unaware that forces far beyond the comprehension of humanity were preparing to intervene. Meetings were held, policies implemented, and initiatives launched, all reflecting ordinary leadership responsibilities. People around the world continued their daily lives, engaged in commerce, education, and family activities. The contrast between human normalcy and the alien operation was stark. While humans focused on immediate and tangible concerns, the coalition was planning actions with consequences measured in light years and theoretical outcomes. This disconnect highlighted the misunderstanding at the core of the aliens' plan. The stage was set for the pivotal moment in Part 3. The coalition believed that the time had come to act, to carry out an operation they were confident would change the course of human history. Their preparations were complete, their technology unmatched, and their data comprehensive. Yet, as history would show, their understanding of humanity was flawed. They had underestimated the adaptability, resilience, and distributed leadership of a species that had survived countless challenges and conflicts. What they saw as a fragile system dependent on a single leader was, in reality, a network of collaboration, cooperation, and decentralized strength. The coalition is on the brink of executing their operation. Every probe is in position, every variable calculated, and every contingency planned. Their confidence is unshakable, built on years of observation and analysis. However, the fundamental misunderstanding of human society remains. The aliens have acted on the belief that one individual can control the fate of an entire species, a belief that will soon be challenged in ways they could never have predicted. Unbeknownst to them, their actions are about to trigger a response that will demonstrate the very unpredictability that it had drawn their attention to humanity in the first place. The story is poised for escalation, and the consequences of misjudgment are about to unfold in dramatic and unforeseen ways. The very moment when the coalition of aliens finally decided to act, years of careful observation, planning, and preparation were about to culminate in what they believed would be a flawless operation. The tiny biomechanical probes had moved into precise positions around the planet, each programmed to carry out specific tasks with extreme precision. The aliens were confident that their plan would succeed without alerting the humans. They believed that removing the so-called leader of Earth would create chaos, disrupt decision-making, and halt humanity's rise in technology and influence. In their calculations, it seemed almost too simple. One action, decisive results, total control. From Earth's perspective, nothing appeared out of the ordinary. The United Earth Council spokesperson continued their work, attending meetings, giving speeches, and coordinating initiatives that affected millions of lives. The world was unaware that invisible eyes were monitoring every movement, every decision, and every interaction. The humans continued to operate under normal circumstances, with daily life following its usual rhythm. Children went to school, markets bustled with activity, scientists worked in laboratories, and governments debated policy. In the background, the alien probes moved silently, weaving through buildings, scanning communications, and preparing to execute the plan that had been years in the making. The moment of action arrived with startling suddenness. Without warning, the operation was executed. The probes carried out their mission with the precision of a well-oiled machine, neutralizing the target in a way that was invisible to humans and undetectable by their technology. From the aliens' point of view, the operation was perfect. Every step had gone according to plan, every variable accounted for, and the target's removal had been completed without error. They watched eagerly for the expected response: confusion, disorganization, and the collapse of human coordination. They were certain that humanity would falter, that their society would become chaotic, and that progress would slow or even stop. But to the aliens' astonishment, the opposite happened. Rather than collapsing, humanity reacted in ways that were completely unpredictable. Leaders across the globe, from diverse nations and cultures, quickly convened, responding to the loss with unity and determination. Scientists, politicians, and ordinary citizens alike rallied, showing a resilience that the aliens had not anticipated. Human societies, far from falling into disarray, began to cooperate more closely than ever before. International communication intensified, plans were made for collective action, and efforts to continue projects that the removed leader had championed surged forward. In essence, the humans had turned what the aliens thought would be a crisis into a catalyst for greater cooperation. The coalition watched in disbelief as events unfolded. Every simulation, every prediction, and every calculation had suggested a very different outcome. Their assumption that humans relied entirely on a single figure for guidance was utterly wrong. The more humans responded with resilience and collaboration, the more confused and frustrated the aliens became. They began to analyze what they were seeing, attempting to understand how a species so small and seemingly fragile could respond with such effectiveness to a sudden and unprecedented loss. The data they collected showed patterns of adaptability, resourcefulness, and leadership spread across a network rather than concentrated in one individual. For the first time, the aliens realized that their understanding of humanity had been incomplete and deeply flawed. Meanwhile, on Earth, the event triggered intense investigation and reflection. Scientists and intelligence agencies began examining the mysterious circumstances surrounding the leader's sudden absence. Initial theories considered natural causes, accidents, and even human sabotage. But anomalies in energy readings, unusual signals, and the sheer precision of the incident hinted that something beyond human understanding might have been involved. While humans were highly analytical and cautious, they were also capable of rapid problem-solving, working together to identify the source and meaning of these anomalies. It was a process of discovery and adaptation, entirely unexpected by the alien observers, who had assumed humans would be paralyzed by uncertainty. As the world adjusted to the sudden change, humans demonstrated an extraordinary ability to reorganize and maintain stability. Governments adapted, appointing interim leaders, and ensuring continuity in critical functions such as healthcare, infrastructure, and communication. Projects that had seemed dependent on the removed leader continued, often with more energy and collaboration than before. Ordinary citizens also played a role, demonstrating resilience in daily life, supporting communities, and participating in civic responsibilities. The aliens had assumed that removing one figure would create chaos, but instead, the humans' distributed leadership, social networks, and adaptive problem-solving proved far more effective than their observers could have imagined. The coalition's internal discussions became frantic. Analysts and strategists tried to reassess their assumptions, reviewing data, simulations, and predictions. They struggled to understand why their calculations had failed so dramatically. Every measure they had used to predict human behavior had been based on the belief that influence and authority was centralized. Now, they had clear evidence that humans operated through collaboration, negotiation, and decentralized decision. The species' ability to absorb shock, reorganize, and even improve their systems in response to crisis was unlike anything the aliens had anticipated. It was a humbling realization, one that challenged the very foundation of their intervention strategy. At the same time, humans' investigation into the unusual energy signatures revealed subtle but undeniable patterns. Scientists discovered that these patterns did not match any known human technology. They appeared to originate from a source far beyond Earth, something moving with intelligence and purpose. While the humans did not yet know the full truth, they began to suspect that some external force had intervened. Their response was cautious, deliberate, and collaborative, bringing together experts from diverse fields to analyze the evidence. The humans' ability to work together, combining knowledge, skills, and perspectives, further reinforced the aliens' realization that their assumptions had been flawed. Humanity was adaptive, resilient, and surprisingly capable of dealing with threats that extended far beyond their planet. Meanwhile, the aliens began to notice an unexpected outcome. The humans' reaction was strengthening their society rather than weakening it. International cooperation increased, technological projects accelerated, and communication networks became more robust. Instead of chaos, the removal of the leader had triggered a form of evolution, pushing humanity to develop stronger connections, more efficient systems, and enhanced problem-solving capabilities. The very action meant to stop humans had instead accelerated their growth, demonstrating a level of resilience and adaptability the aliens had not anticipated. Each step taken by humans reinforced the lesson that one individual could not dictate the fate of the species, no matter how influential they appeared to be. The coalition also observed a growing awareness among humans that something unusual had occurred. Though they did not yet fully understand the source, they were becoming increasingly aware of external influence. This awareness created a sense of caution, but it also strengthened human determination. Scientists, leaders, and communities became more vigilant, more connected, and more purposeful. The aliens had underestimated the capacity of humans to adapt and respond to threats intelligently. Rather than succumbing to fear or confusion, humans were learning from the experience, turning a crisis into an opportunity to improve coordination, problem solving, and resilience. The alien coalition now faced a profound dilemma. Their plan, which had seemed so certain, had not only failed to achieve its intended goal, but had also highlighted the weaknesses in their understanding of human society. They realized that removing one leader had not stopped the species but had inadvertently strengthened it. The humans' response demonstrated qualities that no simulation or observation could fully capture: creativity, collaboration, and the ability to turn adversity into progress. The aliens were forced to reconsider their approach, recognizing that assumptions based solely on observation without cultural understanding could be dangerously misleading. Goddess Part 3 concludes, the scene is set for a dramatic turning point. That humans have demonstrated their resilience, cooperation, and adaptive problem-solving in the face of an unprecedented crisis. The alien coalition, meanwhile, is forced to confront the limitations of its knowledge, recognizing that their assumptions about centralized leadership and species fragility were wrong. The failure of the operation marks the beginning of a critical shift. Humanity, far from being stopped, is now more united and capable than ever, while the aliens must reconsider their approach to a species that is more complex, unpredictable, and resilient than they had imagined. The story moves toward resolution, but the tension remains high, as the consequences of misjudgment will continue to unfold in dramatic and unexpected ways. In the aftermath of the failed operation, a moment that completely changed the understanding of both humans and the alien coalition. The aliens, who had once believed that eliminating the supposed leader would destabilize humanity, were now faced with an unexpected reality. Humans were stronger, more adaptable, and more united than they had ever imagined. From their distant observation posts, they watched as the humans not only maintained their daily lives but also accelerated their collaboration and innovation. It became clear that the assumptions guiding the alien operation were flawed. Humans were not ruled by a single leader. They were guided by networks, communities, and collective decisions. This realization forced the coalition to reconsider everything they had thought they knew. On Earth, humans were just beginning to comprehend the strange circumstances surrounding the leader's disappearance. While the immediate focus was on practical governance, scientists, engineers, and leaders began noticing irregularities that could not be explained by natural events or human technology. Strange energy signatures, anomalous readings in communication networks, and microscopic patterns that defied explanation pointed to an intelligence beyond Earth. At first, these findings were met with skepticism. Scientists debated whether they were misinterpreting the data or missing some natural phenomenon. But as evidence accumulated, it became harder to ignore the possibility that some external force had intervened. This sparked curiosity, determination, and a new sense of unity across disciplines. The coalition, realizing that their initial strategy had failed, faced a critical decision. They could either escalate their interference or attempt a more cautious approach. However, Further interference risked provoking a human response they could not predict, which, based on the recent display of adaptability, could be catastrophic. The aliens recognized that humans were learning from the situation, analyzing patterns, and developing new strategies in real time. Any aggressive move could potentially trigger defensive measures or innovations that would make humanity even more resilient. Faced with this, the coalition began to explore the possibility of diplomacy rather than control, a concept that had not been seriously considered before. Meanwhile, humans continued to investigate the anomalies with incredible efficiency. International teams of scientists and engineers collaborated to analyze the energy signatures and patterns left by the alien probes. Communication networks were used to share information globally, creating a collective intelligence far beyond what any single nation could achieve alone. Citizens, scientists, and leaders became increasingly engaged, contributing knowledge, skills, and observations. What had begun as a sudden and potentially catastrophic loss of leadership evolved into a global project of discovery and adaptation. Humans were learning, innovating, and organizing at a pace that even the alien observers found surprising. During this process, humans also became aware of the importance of collaboration and shared leadership. Governments quickly restructured temporary management systems to ensure continuity of essential services. Scientists coordinated research projects across borders, sharing resources and expertise. Communities mobilized to support each other, ensuring that societal functions such as food distribution, healthcare, and education continued uninterrupted. What the aliens had assumed would be chaos turned into a demonstration of human resilience, adaptability, and capacity for cooperative problem-solving. The collective response showcased the strengths of a distributed system, a concept that had been entirely invisible to the alien coalition. The coalition, observing these developments, realized that their intervention had unintentionally strengthened humanity. Each adaptive response, each collaborative effort, and each problem solved in the absence of centralized leadership highlighted the fundamental flaw in their assumptions. Humans were not fragile, they were dynamic. They thrived on challenge and uncertainty, and when confronted with adversity, they often responded with greater unity and ingenuity. The aliens, despite their advanced technology and intelligence, could not fully anticipate the unpredictable and complex nature of human society. This lesson was profound and humbling, forcing the coalition to reassess not only their current strategy but also their understanding of intelligence, resilience, and leadership. At this point, humans began to make contact with signals and anomalies that suggested the presence of an external intelligence. They used a combination of physics, mathematics, and communication technologies to analyze and eventually decode subtle signals, discovering patterns that indicated deliberate observation. While the full truth of the alien presence was still beyond their complete understanding, humans recognized that they were being watched by a species capable of incredible technology and strategic thinking. This awareness did not incite fear or panic. Instead, it strengthened their collective resolve and curiosity. Humanity, faced with evidence of a greater intelligence, they began to strategize, explore, and prepare, demonstrating foresight and adaptability that defied alien expectations. The coalition, seeing humans reach this level of comprehension and innovation, it shifted from a mindset of control to one of negotiation. They realized that coercion or aggression could backfire, potentially leading to a species that was even more capable and prepared than before. The aliens began to open tentative channels for communication, exploring ways to interact with humanity without triggering conflict. This approach required patience, subtlety, and humility, qualities that the coalition had not fully exercised in their initial planning. From a position of assumed superiority, the aliens now had to acknowledge that humans were both resourceful and intelligent, capable of far more than they had predicted. As negotiations began, humans continued to demonstrate unity and resilience. International efforts focused on understanding the anomalies, documenting the events, and preparing for future challenges. Leaders, scientists, and citizens worked together, creating a network of knowledge and communication that became stronger with each passing day. The humans' collective intelligence, ability to learn quickly, and capacity to adapt under pressure impressed the aliens. They realized that any future engagement with humanity would need to account for the species' decentralized leadership, creativity, and problem-solving capabilities. Humans were no longer simply observers. They were active participants capable of influencing the outcome of interstellar relations. The humans' response also had an unintended consequence for the coalition. It forced them to reconsider their approach to other civilizations in the galaxy. The assumption that a single leader could control an entire species, and that species could be manipulated through targeted interventions, was now clearly flawed. The aliens began to understand the importance of cultural context, social structures, and the unpredictable nature of intelligent life. They recognized that direct interference without understanding could lead to outcomes opposite to those intended. Humanity, by responding to crisis with cooperation and innovation, had taught the aliens a lesson that would reshape their approach to interstellar diplomacy and observation. Throughout this period, humans continued to innovate and strengthen their society. Technological development accelerated, particularly in areas related to communication, energy, and space observation. Collaborative projects expanded across nations, sharing resources, expertise, and knowledge. Communities became more interconnected, creating networks that allowed for rapid problem-solving and adaptation. Humans had not only survived a potential crisis but had turned it into an opportunity for growth and advancement. The aliens observed these developments with growing respect, acknowledging that their initial plan had underestimated the species' true potential. The situation had completely shifted. Humans were stronger, more unified, and more capable than before. They had demonstrated resilience, adaptability, and the ability to turn adversity into progress. The alien coalition, meanwhile, had learned the limitations of their assumptions, recognizing that intelligence, leadership, and social organization could not be understood purely through observation or technology. What had begun as an operation to neutralize a perceived threat had evolved into a profound lesson in humility, understanding, and the complexity of intelligent life. The stage was set for a new chapter of interaction, one that would require communication, cooperation, and mutual respect between species. The resolution was no longer about control. It was about understanding, adaptation, and coexistence, marking a pivotal turning point in the story of both humans and their watchers. With humanity reflecting on the events that had unfolded and realizing how much they had grown through the crisis. The sudden disappearance of the supposed leader, an event orchestrated by a distant alien coalition, had initially caused confusion, uncertainty, and concern. But humans had responded in ways that were far more effective and inspiring than anyone had predicted, including the aliens themselves. Communities had come together, governments had coordinated efficiently, and scientists had collaborated on a global scale. From this, humanity learned a powerful lesson. Challenges, even though seemingly beyond their understanding, could bring people closer and make them stronger. The experience sparked a period of reflection, innovation, and reassessment of what it meant to be a united species. On Earth. Historians and scholars began documenting the events with meticulous care. They traced the timeline of the leader's disappearance, the investigation into unusual phenomena, and the remarkable way humanity adapted to the challenge. They noted that the crisis, though external and mysterious, had revealed strengths within human society that had previously gone unnoticed. Collaboration, adaptability, and resilience became central themes in their analysis. The story of how humans overcame adversity without a single central authority spread across the world, inspiring not only governments and scientists but also ordinary people. Communities celebrated the collective effort, recognizing that every individual had contributed to maintaining stability and progress. The humans' investigation into the mysterious anomalies continued. Fueled by curiosity and determination, scientists analyzed the strange energy patterns and subtle signals, eventually identifying that they had originated from a highly advanced intelligence far beyond Earth. This discovery was profound. For the first time, humans realized that they were not alone in the galaxy and that their actions could be observed and even influenced by other civilizations. Instead of fear, this awareness inspired awe and excitement. Humans became eager to learn, understand, and prepare for future contact. Educational programs, research initiatives, and public awareness campaigns flourished, ensuring that knowledge about the universe and its mysteries spread widely across the planet. Meanwhile, the alien coalition, humbled by their failed operation, had begun a careful reassessment of humanity. They recognized that their assumptions about centralized leadership, societal fragility, and species behavior had been flawed. In the past, they had approached intelligent species with strategies rooted in control, prediction, and preemption. But humanity had demonstrated that intelligence, resilience, and adaptability could not be fully understood through observation or calculations alone. The coalition realized that if they wanted to engage with humans in the future, they would need to adopt a more cautious, respectful, and collaborative approach. Diplomacy, dialogue, and careful observation replaced the earlier plans of intervention and coercion. Tentative communication channels were gradually established between humans and the alien observers. Initial exchanges were cautious, filled with careful study of language, symbols, and intentions. Humans were both curious and vigilant, aware that they were dealing with a species far more advanced technologically and strategically. Despite the imbalance in technology, humans brought something equally important to the table: creativity, adaptability, and collaborative intelligence. The aliens, in turn, began to recognize that these human qualities could not be predicted or controlled by any single action. Respect for humanity's complexity became central to all future interactions, shaping a new model of interstellar engagement based on understanding rather than dominance on Earth. This period of reflection led to significant social and technological advancements. Global cooperation increased as nations and communities recognized the importance of unity in the face of uncertainty. Space research accelerated, with new projects designed not only to explore the universe but also to understand the potential for communication and interaction with other intelligent life. Technology, communication systems, and collaborative platforms improved at an unprecedented rate. Humanity's ability to adapt and learn became a central theme in education, governance, and culture. Lessons from the crisis were incorporated into every level of society, emphasizing resilience, cooperation, and the capacity to respond to unforeseen challenges at the same time. Individuals who had played a role in guiding society through the crisis were celebrated not as sole leaders but as part of a larger network of cooperation. The fallen council member, originally assumed by the aliens to be the supreme leader, was commemorated as a symbol of inspiration and catalyst for unity. Their life, work, and ideals were honored not just for individual achievements but for the way their absence had highlighted humanity's collective strength. This recognition reinforced a key lesson. Leadership was not about control over others but about empowering people to act together, adapt, and thrive. Communities and governments across the world integrated this understanding into policies, civic programs, and education. Meanwhile, the alien coalition documented their own lessons carefully. Their records acknowledged a critical failure in understanding and highlighted the dangers of assumptions based on observation alone. They began developing new strategies for studying intelligent species, emphasizing cultural context, social structures, and the unpredictable nature of behavior. Future observers were trained not to assume uniformity or centralized control but to consider the diversity, creativity, and adaptability of life forms. The coalition's experience with humanity became a case study in humility, learning, and the limits of technology. It was a reminder that intelligence is not only about calculation and analysis but also about adaptability, collaboration, and resilience in the face of the unexpected. The humans themselves reflected on what had happened, realizing that their response had revealed not only their strengths but also areas for growth. Social networks, communication systems, and governance structures were evaluated and improved. Communities focused on resilience planning, education, and global collaboration to prepare for any future crises, whether natural, technological, or extraterrestrial. People came to understand that adversity, though challenging, could be a catalyst for unity, learning, and progress. This period of reflection inspired a cultural shift, emphasizing collective action, creativity, and adaptability as core human values. The interaction between humans and the aliens also had long-term consequences for space exploration. Humans became more ambitious in their plans for reaching beyond Earth, driven by curiosity, caution, and the desire to communicate responsibly with other civilizations. Space programs expanded internationally, combining resources, knowledge, and expertise. Humanity's approach to exploration was now informed by lessons learned from the crisis. Caution, adaptability, and collaboration became central principles. The potential for interstellar engagement was no longer a distant dream. It was a real and tangible objective, approached with careful planning and global coordination. Over time, humanity's resilience and adaptability became a defining part of its identity. The crisis that had been intended to weaken or control them had instead shaped them into a more capable, united, and intelligent species. Every individual, community, and nation contributed to this transformation, demonstrating that strength lies not in a single leader but in the collective capacity to respond to challenges. Humans learned to value cooperation, creativity, and adaptability as essential tools for survival and growth. Their understanding of themselves, their society, and their place in the universe had expanded dramatically. The alien coalition, for its part, maintained cautious observation, respecting the lessons learned from their previous failure. They now approached humanity not as a threat to be neutralized but as a partner in understanding the galaxy. Communication was careful, respectful, and structured to allow learning on both sides. The coalition began to share knowledge selectively, fostering trust and mutual understanding. Humanity, in turn, approached these interactions with curiosity, caution, and creativity, recognizing the importance of learning from other intelligent beings without compromising their autonomy. The dynamic between the two species evolved from fear and misunderstanding to cautious cooperation and respect in the long term. The event that had begun as an alien intervention became a turning point in human history. It reshaped society, inspired technological and cultural advancements, and emphasized the importance of unity, resilience, and collaboration. Humans had faced a challenge that seemed insurmountable, adapted, and turned it into an opportunity for growth and discovery. The lessons learned from this experience influenced every aspect of life on Earth, from governance to education, from science to culture, and from daily interactions to international policy. Humanity emerged stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the unknown challenges of the universe. The alien coalition, once confident in its assumptions, had learned humility and respect for the complexity of intelligent life. Humans, once unaware of their place in the galaxy, had discovered resilience, collaboration, and the capacity for rapid adaptation. The interaction between species had created a shared understanding that would shape future relations, emphasizing the importance of cooperation, communication, and respect. The story became a lesson in the limits of assumptions, the power of unity, and the potential for growth when facing unexpected challenges. It marked a new chapter in humanity's journey, one defined not by fear or control but by curiosity, resilience, and the pursuit of understanding in a vast and mysterious universe.